Exclusive contract novel of Feilu Fiction Network. Genshin Impact. I, a disciple of the Immortal family, become a god by fishing, Su Ming, who accidentally crossed the Tivat continent and was adopted as a closed-door disciple by Liuyun borrowing the Wind True Lord, suddenly activated the divine-level fishing system. As long as you travel to Tiwat and check in various fishing spots to increase your luck, you can earn rewards through fishing. So Su Ming began his journey of fishing along the way and traveling to 7 countries. Ing. Su Ming, who do you really choose between Shen He and me? Shen He said, Junior brother, don't be deceived by bad women outside. Hu Tao said, oh, someone has to take responsibility for what they said, otherwise. The funeral procession will be arranged for you for free by the main hall owner. Shadow. My hidden dessert has been eaten by someone. Do you have any idea about it, Su Ming? Pulling out the knife, Naxida. Yesterday, the great sage dismembered City Guo. Do you have any clue, Su Ming? Funina. So last night you taught me how to make cream puffs, was that what you meant? Su Ming. Cough cough, stop arguing, you are all my wings. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. The System, Save It. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Did you fail again? On a vacant land at the top of the Aozong mountain, a handsome young man dressed in a white robe with a dusty demeanor silently sighed and dispersed the seal of failure in his hand. Su Ming shook his head helplessly and said, Is it still not possible? Is it difficult to say that my talent is really so poor? But my master clearly said that my talent is extraordinary. Oh, it would be great if I had a divine eye, but unfortunately, I don't seem to have the same treatment as a stranger like me. Su Ming stood up and walked to the edge of the Tianqi Lake at the top of the Aozong mountain, looking at the reflection of his face in the lake and falling into memories. It has been 3 years since I was hit by a mud truck that drove under the influence of alcohol and ran a red light while crossing the road for 30 meters. It was also the 3rd year he was taken in by the passing fairy bird sister when he traveled to this Tivat continent and got lost in the mountains of Liuyun, almost starving to death. The kind-hearted immortal bird sister is naturally that woman. I love to invent. No, Liuyun borrowed the wind from the true Lord. I don't know if it's because he's handsome or because he's really talented. Sister Xianyao came up and asked Su Ming if he would like to practice with her. If she is unwilling, she will also send Su Ming to Liuyun port and not let him starve to death in this wilderness. Su Ming, who had just traveled without any system, naturally chose to agree and paid his respects on the spot. After all, there is a fairy who serves as a master. If he misses any points, he will be able to protect himself in this world after learning it. After becoming a disciple, he naturally began to practice. At first it was very smooth because even without the eye of God, he was able to feel the free elemental power in the air through the method passed to him by the Wind True Lord through Liuyun. He is also familiar with the styles and drawing methods of various talismans. He can also make various seals easily. Even the art of mechanism, originating from the technologically advanced world of another world, and having been baptized by some SCI-DeFi concepts, is extremely fast to get started. Even occasionally, it can provide some new ideas for Liuyun to borrow wind from Zhenjuan's research and development of new institutions. But with a perfect score in theory, he actually scored 0 in practice. Every time I prepare to apply theory to practical operations, I always fail due to the inability to use elemental forces. Regarding this, Liuyun, borrowing the wind, also expressed great eye-opening. Because the method she taught Su Ming was an upgraded version of the spells used by the sorcerers of the exorcism aristocratic families in the Liuyun folk. Although it is still not a complete magic, mastering the method can also allow ordinary people without divine eyes to borrow a certain degree of elemental power. But unfortunately, Su Ming, who has excellent intelligence and talent, cannot use it. She had no choice but to start teaching Su Ming some self-defense martial arts, marksmanship, and archery. And I guarantee that since she has taken Su Ming as a disciple, she will never give up on him just because he is unable to cultivate magic and talismans, and then start thinking of ways in seclusion. Su Ming didn't give up either. He tried every day, but often ended in failure. Hey, if it doesn't work out, why don't we just switch to becoming a warrior? Or switch to technology? Let's talk to our master about building Gundam another day. Countless failures have made Su Ming want to give up. After all, he is not unable to sense elemental forces, but there is a force in the dark that hinders him from using elemental forces properly. Just as he was feeling disheartened, a mechanical sound rang out in his mind without warning. Ding, the host has been found. Binding is in progress. The divine level fishing system has been bound, and the beginner gift package has been sent to the backpack. For specific functions, please refer to the instructions and announcements provided by the host. After a burst of mechanical sounds, a large piece of text appeared in front of Su Ming, detailing the usage and functions of the system. Damn it! After all these years of travel, I finally have a good fortune. Su Ming almost jumped up unhappily. Now I don't have to worry anymore. With the system, I also need to hook the eyes of the 8 gods. If the eye of God is a good peripheral, then the system is pure cheating. Su Ming quickly began to check the only text announcement posted by the system. Not many words, Su Ming quickly finished reading, and he also quickly understood the functions of the system. Or, to put it another way, he, who had read countless online articles in his past life, guessed the functions of the system when he saw its name. Simply put, Su Ming can obtain various rewards through fishing, including but not limited to items, weapons, techniques, abilities, bloodline, and so on. The host's fishing behavior at any location and time has a probability of receiving rewards at any level. At the same time, if the host participates in the original storyline and interferes to deviate from the original storyline, they will receive a permanent increase in luck. The higher the luck value of the host itself, the higher the probability of obtaining rewards and rare rewards. When the lucky value is high enough, it may have a wonderful effect. At the same time, there are many special fishing spots on the Tivat continent, and fishing at these spots will greatly increase the probability of obtaining rewards. After reading the introduction, Su Ming also understood. Although the system itself seems to be a leisure and elderly care system, it seems that Su Ming is eager to pack a fish pond and sit by the pond every day to sprinkle bait and fish, and then put the fish back in place to brush rewards. But since Su Ming looked at the probability of receiving rewards announced by the eye system, he knew that the system might still prefer to make him a fishing enthusiast and intervene more in the plot. Because with that initial probability, it's not as good as the Mi family's minimum guarantee for card draws. Not wanting to modify the plot, not going to those fishing spots, probably getting a reward for fishing once a day is already considered good. I know how to use it. Now let me see what tricks this beginner gift pack can send me. Su Ming took a deep breath and opened the beginner gift pack that was temporarily stored in the system backpack. Chapter 2. Has never had such a wonderful start. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Congratulations to the host for obtaining Never Air Force. Special buff, rare reward acquisition card, 3 remaining times, charm affinity, Never Air Force. Special buff. Fishing man Never Air Force. Every time you lower the pole, you will catch fish or something else. Rare reward acquisition card. When you successfully catch a fish while fishing, you will first consume the acquisition times to obtain rare rewards. The remaining number of times is 3. Charm and affinity. Your charm can make you feel like a spring breeze, making you feel even more approachable. Su Ming couldn't help but curl his lips as he looked at the 3 rewards in front of him. The first reward has nothing to say, it's like the system provides him with a minimum guarantee mechanism. After all, the probability of rewards is already low enough. If it were for someone with poor fishing skills, such as Su Ming himself, wouldn't this system be the same as not having it? I can't catch a few fish all day, and I haven't received any rewards yet. If that's the case, this system won't be a decoration anymore. In Su Ming's view, the second reward is the real beginner gift package. 3 rare reward opportunities are the quickest way to enhance his current strength. As for the third reward of charm and affinity. There's nothing to say, it's just about making Su Ming, who is already handsome and extraordinary, become as handsome as readers. Of course, he also added a touch of approachable temperament, which made his cool and aloof demeanor, which had been cultivated in the mountains, fade a bit. Although Su Ming is essentially a joyful person who fears for the stability of the world, his days of peaceful cultivation in the mountains will somewhat overshadow some of his essence. After opening the beginner gift package, let me see what level your system is at. Su Ming murmured to himself and then turned his gaze to the rare reward acquisition card in the system backpack. With the buff of Never Air Force, as long as he catches 3 fish, he can receive 3 rewards. I hope I can improve my current strength. It's time for me to make a comeback from before crossing over to now. Su Ming thought of walking to the side and took out the fishing rod he usually used to pass the time with during his leisure time. Then he carefully hung the bait and sat cross on the edge of the Aozong heavenly pool to start fishing. Not long after, countless spotted killifish in a lake bit the hook and were immediately caught by Su Ming. Su Ming was pleasantly surprised by the speed and smoothness, which made him unable to catch a single black-backed bass even after fishing for an afternoon on weekdays. One thing is that the system's prompt sound has already sounded in his mind, telling him that he has received the reward. Secondly, as an amateur fishing enthusiast, the feeling of fishing with a hook is really enjoyable. Don't say whether the fish is big or not, just say whether it's fast or not. This sense of harvest is much stronger than sitting idle all afternoon and catching a small fry. He quickly became addicted and even started the next shot based on what reward the system gave him. In a few minutes, there was another fish, this time a black-backed bass with a full arm length. Su Ming silently took out a wooden bucket filled with water and raised the black-backed bass in the bucket. He just put the guppy back into the lake, after all, it's just an ornamental fish. The taste. After eating it once, he swore not to eat it again. But the black-backed bass is different. This thing is so delicious. Not to mention such a big one. Especially the fish in the Aozong heavenly pool, the water quality here is not covered, and the fish raised naturally taste incredibly delicious. At least Su Ming has been eating for a few years without getting tired. And with such a big black-backed bass, he can be considered lucky tonight. After putting the black-backed bass back into the bucket, Su Ming immediately started his third shot, which was equally swift, but the fish caught this time was almost small, only larger than the fry. Su Ming then picked the fish and put it back into the lake. After satisfying the addiction of a fishing master, he began to look at the 3 rewards he had received. But when he saw the reward he had received, his eyes couldn't help but widen again. Congratulations to the host for obtaining Dragon Factor, EX, congratulations to the host for obtaining the perfect version of the Pafanti gene, congratulations to the host for obtaining Dance in the Sky Technique, Dragon Factor, EX. Derived from the type Moon world, it belongs to the highest level of fantasy species. Dragon Bloodline Factor. People who possess the Dragon Factor can generate magic just by breathing. This is a highly concentrated Dragon Factor that, when fused, is almost equivalent to a humanoid dragon, greatly enhancing body strength and generating a large amount of magic with each breath. Pafanti gene, perfect version. The gene of Pafanti, an imperial-level collapsing beast, can be fused to gain the power to control ice and snow, and greatly enhance physical fitness. This is the perfect version after system modification, and there will be no negative reactions after host fusion. Dancing in the Sky. Practitioners can move freely in the air without being restricted by gravity. Holy crap, Su Ming ultimately underestimated the value of the system.So called rare rewards. After this wave, Su Ming felt that as long as he combined these three rewards, he would dare to touch even the seven gods. Leaving aside the dragon factor of Xingyue, the perfect version of the Pafanti gene, as long as its ability is fully controlled, it is really not much weaker. After all, this is the most valuable imperial-level collapse beast in the world of collapse. The last person who fused its genes was Kevin Caslana. As for the final dance technique, which may seem ordinary, it is actually the most practical among these three skills. There's nothing else, learning it will make you fly. Serious flying skills. After watching the reward, Su Ming was not immersed in surprise and shock. He immediately stabilized his mind and said, "System, use the reward." Chapter 3. Professional travelers should dare to make judgments. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Su Ming just finished speaking, and the system used a reward for him. The dragon factor and Pafanti genes have also begun to fuse. There is no discomfort in the process of fusion. Not long after, Su Ming felt the change in his body. He has already felt the reinforcement brought by the dragon factor. Although the physical strengthening it brings is not as significant as the Pafanti gene, there are several characteristics that the Pafanti gene cannot bring to it. That's the extremely high defense and elemental resistance, as well as long way. Yes, the extremely high dragon factor allowed Su Ming to possess all the characteristics of a dragon. Long way, as well as all legendary stories, mythological stories, and even all stories, possess the characteristics of dragons. Extremely high resistance to supernatural forces such as magic and elements, as well as the unparalleled physical defense of dragon scales. Of course, the dragon factor brings more than just these. For Su Ming, the most crucial thing is the magic brought by the dragon factor. The magic of the moon world is essentially a manifestation of life itself, a manifestation of the power of life and soul. Otherwise, those magicians would not invent a way to restore magic, which is popular with the secondary group. Magic can not only be used to strengthen oneself, but also for individuals or spirits with extraordinary magical powers to use this skill. And there are many ways to use magic externally, which can be said to be infinitely useful. Whether it's turning magic into armor or a weapon, or firing it directly as a light cannon, it's fine. After experiencing the changes brought by the dragon factor, Su Ming exhaled lightly. The ordinary breath turned into a cold wind, instantly freezing most of the Aozong Tianqi in front of Su Ming. Indeed extraordinary, truly worthy of the ability to resist the liberation of the heavenly fire holy cutting. Although using freezing to counteract the side effects of the heavenly fire divine cutting is essentially due to Kevin's exceptional abilities, which have enabled Pafanti to unleash his freezing abilities. But it can also be seen that the mutated emperor's ability to destroy the beast itself is impressive. Moreover, the physical strengthening it brings is extraordinary, and Su Ming can clearly feel that his body strength is different. If it weren't for the experience of practicing in the mountains and learning how to control oneself, he might have been overwhelmed by the surging power, so he would have to walk cautiously. Fortunately, he has never slackened in his cultivation over the years. Although he was never able to use elemental power, it was also because of this that he was able to calmly cultivate martial arts and exercise his physical body. These efforts have actually paid off today. Just Su Ming didn't feel happy for too long, so he frowned. He, who has greatly strengthened his body, has also significantly improved his perception ability. He noticed something behind him, as if his gaze was fixed on him. Did someone go up the mountain? Hey, I've been focusing on familiarizing myself with my abilities and letting ordinary people climb up the mountain. Now Master has to mutter about it for a while. Well, let's see if we can remedy it. Anyway, that old lady in the cave doesn't know what to do every day. After all this time, I don't think she will notice. Hurry up and drive the people away. Su Ming sighed. His daily task was to drive away those who went up the mountain to seek immortality. This is also the only thing he does on the mountain besides practicing. After all, on this mountain top, my master stays in the cave every day to make small inventions. My cheap senior sister, Shen He, is too murderous, so the heavy responsibility of driving people falls on him. I just didn't expect that after only familiarizing myself with my skills for a while, I haven't seen a place where ordinary people come for the past 6 months, and that's how people come. And they also arrived at the mountaintop smoothly. Thinking of this, he stood up silently and walked towards the figure not far away. Earlier, on the mountain road of Mount Ozang-Ing, this Aozang mountain is also too high. Would immortals really live in such a place? After flying weakly for a while, Pai Meng felt deflated and lay on the head of Ing, who was looking around for the mountain road. Ing sighed helplessly and said, all right, hold on a bit longer, we'll soon reach the top of the mountain. I heard that the true lord of Liuyun borrowing wind is here. After notifying this immortal, I will take you to Wangshu Inn to eat delicious food. Along the way, we will find the demon subduing saint, and then we can return to Liuyun port. Okay. You can't go back on your word. The owner of Wangshu Inn seems to be from Mond. There should be someone selling honey sauce, carrots, and fried meat there. I want to eat 2 large portions. Okay. Alright, hurry up and fly off my head, you're too heavy. I don't have it. The two of them were arguing and walking along the mountain path, and soon arrived at the top of the mountain. Looking at the scene in front of him, Pai Meng couldn't help but exclaim in surprise, wow! What a great view! Is this where the immortals live? Ing couldn't help but nod as she looked at the misty scenery before her. However, she never forgot what she was here for, and after a little surprise, she began to look around, searching for a place that might be the immortal family's cave. Unlike before when she and Pai Meng visited Jianyue Zhuyang and Lishui Daishan, the immortal who lived in this Aozang mountain seemed to prefer to stay in the cave rather than go out for a stroll. Otherwise, by now she should have seen fairies walking outside in this fairyland-like place like before. Hey, Ing, look at it. Can that be the fairy we're looking for? Pai Meng seemed to have discovered something, flew to Ying's side, and then reached out his little hand to point to an open space near Aozang Tianqi. Ing followed and saw a figure meditating by the lake. Ing took 2 steps forward before finally seeing the figure clearly. The person was dressed in a white robe, with long black hair hanging at the back of his head tied up with a simple thick hemp rope, casually swaying behind him. He also wore a pair of black dragon arms on his wrists. Just looking at the back, I feel different from ordinary people, with a sense of aloofness that transcends the mundane world. After watching the movie, Qing Rening, Ing also breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that this trip was not as troublesome as she had thought. Chapter 4. That Woman Blows Up, New Book Seeks Support. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Just before the screen could come forward to inquire, she felt a gentle breeze brushing her face, and the figure came to her at a speed that was completely indistinct. This is the place where immortals cultivate themselves. If you have nothing important to do, please hurry down the mountain and don't disturb the tranquility here. At some point, Su Ming had already arrived in front of Ing and Pai Meng. Su Ming was also somewhat surprised. Just now, he only noticed that someone was going up the mountain, so he hurriedly came over to rush people. It was only after he walked in that he realized it was Ing Mei who came. Although he knew from the moment he traveled that one day he would have to deal with this protagonist. But today's sudden meeting still surprised him a bit. It seems that the old man can't bear to retire anymore. It seems that he has already faked death, Su Ming thought. When he saw Ing and Pai Meng, as well as the 100 No Taboos book that Ing had just taken out of his pocket, he roughly guessed the current timeline. At this moment it is time for the 2 unlucky individuals in front of me to be wanted by 7 stars, holding the 100 No Taboos book and seeking the immortals to prove their innocence. On the other hand, when he heard Su Ming's words to rush people, he quickly took out the 100 No Taboos to prove his identity, and then quickly spoke up, "This immortal, we have a chance to meet." Then, regardless of Su Ming's answer, he went on to reveal to himself the recent assassination of the immortal Jianni god and the fact that Ying himself was falsely accused of being an assassin. Finally, he explained the purpose of his trip, which was to convey the message to Lord Jianyang of Shiyue and gather immortals to discuss together. After hastily speaking, Ying took a deep breath. I can tell she's really in a hurry. Su Ming couldn't help but laugh when he saw this. Ying Mei is even cuter than she thought. Miss, it's okay to speak slowly. After all, I'm not the fairy you're looking for. Ah. Ying widened her eyes upon hearing this, and after a brief brainstorming session, she came to the conclusion that she seemed to have mistaken someone. At the thought of this, her face blushed slightly, appearing somewhat awkward. She looked up at Su Ming in front of her and suddenly came up with an idea. How handsome. Then she lifted her head and stared blankly at Su Ming. Su Ming looked at the screen in front of him, staring at him with a strange expression. However, feeling the awkward atmosphere on the field, Su Ming took the initiative to break it and said, You should be the honorary knight who solved the dragon disaster in Mond, right? I've heard of it before, and meeting you today is truly extraordinary. Before Ying could answer, Pai Meng was surprised and said, Wow. Do you actually know us? I'm practicing in the mountains, but that doesn't mean I don't know what's going on outside. Besides, I would still inquire about such a big issue as the Mon dragon disaster. Especially when I heard that the people who solved the dragon disaster were not Mon people, I naturally became interested. Just go and inquire about the Adventurers Association, and you will naturally know their identities. Su Ming smiled and said the words he had just fabricated. I haven't been down the mountain since I started practicing on the mountain. But it doesn't affect him. Who makes him a traveler? But there must be a beginning, so that I can get to know Ying Lai more naturally. I even pointed at her to help disrupt the plot. Upon hearing Su Ming's words, Pai Meng was very pleased and flew around the screen with a smile. Hey Ying. We seem to be famous now. Su Ming also thought to himself upon seeing this silly child is so easy to coax. He can't even touch the north with just a few words. At this moment, Ying also realized that she had lost her composure. After the blush on his face deepened a bit, he quickly asked, Sir. If you're not a fairy, where is the fairy? We really have something urgent to report to the fairy. It's okay. My master is in the cave. After such a big incident at Liuyun port, my master should also know about it. Come with me, I'll take you to see my master. Su Ming straightened his expression and instead of continuing to be polite to the two of them, he directly got to the point. Pai Meng was somewhat surprised and said, So you are a disciple of the Immortal. Not bad, thanks to my master's adoption and education, otherwise I would have died in this remote mountain. Su Ming didn't say much, just opened the seal of the cave with Ying and Pai Meng, and walked in. Before the three of them could walk long in the vast cave, Su Ming heard the familiar scolding voice with a hint of arrogance. Su Ming, why bother me if I don't practice well outside? Didn't I tell you that I need to study new mechanisms these days? You even brought outsiders in. At the next moment, accompanied by a slightly angry tone, a white fairy bird flew in front of the three of them. Ignoring the screen and Pai Meng beside Su Ming, she raised her wings and patted them towards Su Ming's head. At this moment, Su Ming had already undergone a transformation, unable to withstand the wing strike of his master. He dodged on one side, even though he had started for Ying. Master, there has been a change in Liuyun port. The Emperor of the Rock on the Immortal classic instrument was assassinated. These two people were falsely accused by 7 stars as assassins and came over with the No Taboos book. Master Shuyue and Master Lishui are already aware of this matter. Master Shuyue has sent a message inviting you to come together for discussion. Liuyun borrowed the wind from Jinjuan. Upon hearing this, Jinjuan immediately exploded. It really exploded. His feathers stood up all over his body. What? What a coincidence. Chapter 5. How can I stay with these insects? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Afterwards, after Ying and Pai Meng added some details, Liuyun borrowed the wind and became furious. How unreasonable! How unreasonable! It seems there's nothing more to say. The meeting is over, what else are we discussing? I'm going to suppress Liuyun port now. Su Ming, go and deliver a message for me. Let the two old men, Shuyue and Lishui, come to Liuyun port immediately. When is it? Still discussing matters. Watching his master almost lose his sanity, Su Ming still spoke up and admonished him a few words to prevent Liuyun from doing anything out of line with Feng Jinjuan. Master, what a great figure the emperor is. How could he be so easily assassinated? There may be another hidden truth behind this matter. Perhaps it was for this reason that Master Shuyue invited the Immortal to discuss the matter together. After speaking, Su Ming also added, and if the emperor is really assassinated, the top priority is to first handle the emperor's affairs, rather than rushing to conflict with the 7 stars. Su Ming's persuasion also helped Liuyun calm down with the help of Feng Jinjuan. Then he sighed and said with a hint of guilt and desolation, "Ah. I've lived for 1,000 years, but I can't see it as thoroughly as you do. Also, if the emperor really unfortunately passed away, we, the immortals, would not first bid farewell to the emperor, but instead have a conflict with the 7 stars, which is truly a violation of the rules. Anyway, I will go to the discussion of Shuyue first, and no matter what, I must first handle the emperor's affairs properly." The ceremony of sending immortal scriptures has not been held for many years, and it is unknown whether ordinary people in Liuyun port still know the rules. If you don't know, then let us old folks handle it. After speaking, Liuyun took advantage of the wind and changed the tone of his words. An unimaginable murderous aura burst out from his body, causing some discomfort to Ying beside him. Su Ming also sighed. Is this the murderous aura of the immortals who have been killed all the way since the war of demons and gods? It is indeed not vulgar. As for the truth about the assassination of the emperor, the 7 stars' account of stirring up trouble will be calculated later. If I had known what 7 stars had done behind my back, then I wouldn't have been merciless. After speaking, Liuyun took advantage of the wind and flew out towards the cave of Jianyang Jinjuan, who was cutting the moon. As soon as Liuyun borrowed the wind and left, only Su Ming remained in the cave. I don't know where the girl is going next, Su Ming asked. It seems that there is still a demon-subduing saint who hasn't been invited. I heard from the moon-cutting and sun-building true lord that the demon-subduing saint is at the Wangshu Inn, and we will go there next. Upon hearing this, Su Ming smiled and said, since that's the case, I wonder if the next 2 of you would like to welcome me along. Ying Haoqi said, how could you want to go with us? Faced with Ying's question, Su Ming also explained, that demon-slaying sage was originally one of the guardians of the Yiksha under the throne of the Rock King Emperor, and he is also the only surviving Yiksha general today. According to the contract, the protector Yiksha will eliminate the demons within the territory of Fuyue and remain unchanged for thousands of years. Over time, the Yakuzas are inevitably afflicted with irremovable obstacles. Karmic obstacles cause profound damage to Yiksha, and for humans, they exist like highly toxic substances. Ordinary people or those who hold the eye of God do not say that they will die if they touch it, and they are not far from each other. The most crucial thing is that even the demon-subduing saint himself doesn't know when he will become possessed by his karma. To prevent himself from harming innocent people after being possessed by demons, and to prevent his own karma from harming mortals, he always avoids mortals. You might not be able to meet him so straightforwardly. Even if you have 100 taboos, he will only come out to see you once at most and won't listen to you talk too much. Speaking, Su Ming pointed to himself and said, but I'm different. The Immortal family has also practiced how to eliminate demons and avoid being contaminated by karma. Besides, as disciples of the Immortal family, it's always more convenient for you to pass a message than for yourself, right? Pai Meng nodded after listening, then turned his head to Ying and said, Ying, it seems that what he said makes some sense. Since we're looking for a fairy, it's better to find someone who understands the fairy to help us than to find it ourselves, right? Ying also nodded and then smiled happily, extending her small hand and saying, welcome. It's all up to you now. My name is Ying. Well, you should have known it a long time ago, but I don't know your name yet. Su Ming also reached out his hand and grabbed it, then said, just call me Su Ming. Next, take care of me a lot. When Su Ming held Ying's hand, her expression also became somewhat unnatural, and her speech became somewhat stuttering. No, you're welcome, then. Next, we'll be our travel companions. If you don't mind Ying, that's it. Su Ming Song opened his hand and said, alright, I just caught a big fish. I was planning to keep it for dinner, but since the incident happened suddenly, I'll have to eat it now. Upon hearing this, Pai Meng's eyes lit up and he said, wow. There's something delicious. Ying Qian also silently tugged at the hem of Pai Meng's clothes and said, pay attention to your appearance. Haha, it's not delicious yet, Su Ming smiled and said, I'll go and cook it before we talk. Do you want grilled fish or boiled black-backed bass? Pai Meng poked his finger and said awkwardly, can we all take it? Then let's eat one fish and two. Su Ming smiled. Ying said somewhat awkwardly, sorry, Paman has always been so greedy. Let me help you too, I can't keep you busy alone. Okay, then I'll leave the task of grilling fish to you. Boiled black-backed bass in water is also a dish of glass moon vegetables, let me do it. The sixth octopus is really great, it looks like this. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After a big meal, Paman patted his bulging belly and collapsed to the ground. I can't eat it anymore. Whether it's Ying Yu making grilled fish or Su Ming's boiled black-backed bass, they're all so delicious. The black-backed bass is so great, it makes itself so delicious, hee 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 hee. Ying had a black line on her face and said, you're such a big fish. You've eaten half of it yourself, and neither Su Ming nor I have eaten much. It's okay, it's okay. Although the fish are gone, I can catch some more. Su Ming smiled and helped Pai Meng out of the encirclement. Coincidentally, he also wanted to try how long it would take for him to catch fish without a reward card to receive a reward. Ying shook her head and said, forget it, fishing takes too much time. Now let's go find the demon-slaying saint as soon as possible. Sorry, Ying smiled apologetically. Parman has always been like this, don't blame her. If you're not full, I still have some bread here. If you don't mind, just eat some. Ying took out a small bread and handed it to Su Ming. Su Ming took the bread and took a bite directly. Yes, it's important. What to eat? Let's talk about it at the Wangshu Inn. The chefs there are skilled at cooking and have a variety of dishes. Upon hearing these words, Pai Meng, who was already lying dead, immediately stood up again and said, really? Of course. Although Wangshu Inn is a bit far from the Aozang mountain, at our speed, it won't be long before we arrive. Pai Meng. What are you waiting for? Let's go quickly. Don't let the demon subduing saint wait in a hurry. Ying Fu sighed and said, are you looking for the demon subduing saint? I'm too embarrassed to expose you. Just Pai Meng ignored her and flew towards the mountain path on his own, turning around and waving, hey. What are you waiting for? Hurry up. Sorry. She has always been like this, Ying explained awkwardly to Su Ming. There's nothing embarrassing, with such a travel companion, the journey won't be boring, right? However, since you're going down the mountain, don't take the mountain path. I'll take you down. Ying puzzled and said, is there any shortcut? Su Ming gave a sly smile and said, you'll know right away. Then he hugged Ying's waist and took a step forward to pick up Pai Meng, directly using his dance technique to fly in the sky. Yaks 2. Pai Meng and Ying couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Especially Ying, when she found herself being carried by Su Ming and flying in the sky, she couldn't help but cover her eyes. It's really strange. Ying couldn't help but think in her heart. Even though I used to be able to fly at high altitudes. Why are some people afraid to open their eyes now? She put down her hands and let her gaze return, only to see a happy smiling face confidently smiling. As if sensing his gaze, Su Ming also lowered his head to look at his screen. Ying's heart trembled suddenly, her heart stopped beating for a moment, and then she quickly covered her eyes. As for Pemin, oh, she has already passed out. It's really strange that a guy who has been flying all the time is afraid of heights. Is it difficult or is it afraid of falling to death? But Su Ming didn't think too much at this moment. Just like he didn't pay attention to Ying's strange reaction. Because the feeling of free flight is really enjoyable. Especially for him at this moment, flying does not require any consumption at all. Under the influence of the dragon factor, the consumption of high-speed flight in dance sky technique is replenished with a few breaths. I haven't regained much of my magic yet. This also allows him to fly at high speed without restraint. That's it now. Su Ming glanced at the towering tree not far below him and realized that he seemed to have flown to the Wangshuin. So he slowed down and slowly descended from the air, finding an empty space to put down Ying and Pai Meng. We're here. The first flight was a bit rough, I hope you didn't feel uncomfortable. Pai Meng. Ah. Ying, have you learned the art of clone? Ah, there are so many Ying. After being put down by Su Ming, Ying silently turned her back and dared not look at Su Ming. After seeing Ying's reaction, Su Ming was momentarily stunned before thinking about what he had done. Well, his recent behavior, as a new friend we just met, seems to have gone too far. However, from the results, both parties were quite satisfied. Well, as expected, in terms of cuteness, I still have to be a Ying Mei, even if it's a bit disdainful. Su Ming didn't speak either, just sat on a nearby stone, waiting for the two of them to adjust their state. To his surprise, compared to Ying, it was Pai Meng who recovered first. Hey! Did we go down the mountain? Hey! Isn't that Wangshuin over there? We're here. Pai Meng flew up with some disbelief, and only after confirming multiple times did he dare to believe that he had already arrived at his destination. So fast. Pai Meng exclaimed in surprise and then looked at Su Ming. No, you can actually fly. Su Ming chuckled and said, the cultivation of the immortal family has various mysteries, and I am my master's proud disciple. It's not surprising that I know some flying techniques, right? Moreover, matters are urgent and power is exercised. It's not enough to travel slowly. Master and uncle, they are still waiting for the demon-subduing saint to come and discuss matters. Pai Meng was actually fooled by Su Ming's words. At this moment, Ying also calmed down. After taking several deep breaths, I barely calmed down. Pai Meng also flew up and asked, Ying, how are you now? Is there anything uncomfortable? Cough, it's okay, everything is fine with me, Ying coughed twice before responding with some pretense. Pai Meng was very confused after listening and said, hey. But your face is so red. Is it really okay? Oh my, it's really okay. If I ask you again about next month's meal expenses, it will be gone. Hey, no. I won't ask anymore. Chapter 7. Looking up but not seeing, looking down to see the true Lord, new book. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Watching Ying and Pai Meng, who were somewhat embarrassed and angry, play around, Su Ming also smiled knowingly. Well, this scene is really nice. This is the scene that life should have. The scene of the two fighting also reminded him of his daily life with his cheap senior sister when he was on the mountain. I don't know what Shen He's reaction would be if he returned to the mountain and found no one present. If I had known earlier, I would have left a note explaining the situation. I hope there won't be any trouble, right? I don't think so. On Mount Aozang, a slender and graceful figure carried a medicine basket in his hand and climbed the mountain path. The medicine basket is filled with freshly picked qingxin, which is what she eats every day. Although her junior brother has explained to her many times, practicing does not mean having to eat wind and dew every day. Eating a refreshing heart every day is also unhealthy. It's all because the two true masters, Shuyue Zhuyang and Lishui Daishan, don't even know how to cook, so when taking her to practice, they can only fabricate such lies to deceive her. My junior brother also cooks for her every day, and she really likes her junior brother's craftsmanship. But the habits that have been developed since childhood cannot be changed. Although she had started eating and drinking normally, after a while, she couldn't help but eat some refreshing snacks. Fortunately, in this vast expanse of clouds, everything is lacking, except for medicinal herbs such as qingxin. Shen He went to clear his heart as usual, but when he returned today, there was something wrong with the situation on the mountain. The junior brother who has been practicing by the lake is nowhere to be seen. Entering my master's cave, even my master is not inside. The lake surface of Aozang Tianqi has also been frozen. There are still traces of cooking by the lake, and even the processed charcoal still emits some smoke even after being watered. Shen He put down the medicine basket, and his divine eye lit up, and the disaster appeared in her hand. It was just an exploration, and there was nothing strange about it. She let go of the disaster with some disappointment, inserted it diagonally on the ground, and then used her fingerprints to try to track her junior brother's breath. Then she undoubtedly failed. Su Ming's physical body has been transformed and is no longer the familiar aura that Shen He was familiar with before. But she didn't achieve nothing, at least she traced the other two breath streams. 2 breaths of departing towards the direction of Dihua Island. Shen He took a deep breath and then took out a photo from his arms. Above is the profile of a handsome young man buried in processing ingredients. It's Su Ming. Over the years, Shen He only had 2 photos on his body and she never left. A picture of her long-abandoned hometown village. The other one is the profile of the junior brother who accompanied her secretly down the mountain to the abandoned village at that time. That was secretly taken by her using a camera while her junior brother was preparing lunch. You are the lonely chin-killing demon, you should not have any interaction with anyone again. Her father's whispers rang in her heart, she let out a long sigh, pulled out her breath, and walked down the mountain. Oh! This golden shrimp balls is delicious. Wow! This almond curd is also good. Why are all the things here so delicious? Su Ming and Ying coincidentally looked at Pai Meng, who was swirling around the dining table. At this moment, Su Ming couldn't help but ask, how could she fit so much in such a small stomach? Ying helplessly supported her forehead and said, so about 1/3 of the compensation I received from my commission was used as food expenses. Then you can eat first. I'll go find the demon-subduing saint. After informing you of the situation, I'll take you back to Liuyun port. Ying nodded and suddenly asked, what about after that? Will you still be with me? After listening, Su Ming smiled and said, who knows? Maybe I will continue to practice on the mountain, but I can't say for sure. After speaking, Su Ming observed Ying's expression with great interest. Sure enough, a hint of anxiety appeared on Ying's face. Su Ming also changed his tone when he saw this and said, however, traveling to 7 countries and being an adventurer seems to be good. After all, traveling won't take many years. My master is so capable of living, so it shouldn't be a problem for me to go down the mountain and play for a few years. Ying breathed a sigh again after listening. But before she could be happy for too long, Su Ming said again, oh, but when the emperor passes away, Liuyun port is in the right time to hire people. As a disciple of the Immortal family, how can he sit idly by? If you leave your country behind to travel, it may be a bit derelict of duty. Ying suddenly wilted again. But this time she finally reacted and said, "Hey! Are you playing with me?" Su Ming quickly waved his hand with a smile and said, "It's just fair to say." Yingqi pouted and asked with a hint of anger, "And what's your answer?" "Confidentiality." Su Ming raised his index finger and placed it in front of his mouth. Then he rushed into the inn before Ying Mei could take action, and went up to the top floor to find the demon-subduing saint. Only leaving Ying in place, powerless and furious. Ah! How angry! Su Ming, this guy. After hearing Ying's scolding, Pai Meng, who was completely engrossed in eating, looked at her and said, "Ying, why are you angry? If you don't eat, give me your portion. Don't even think about it." Ying glared fiercely at Pai Meng, then turned her anger into an appetite and started cooking like revenge. On the other side, as Su Ming reached the top floor, he felt a strong wind sweeping behind him. Looking back. I don't think so. Looking down, it was indeed the demon-slaying saint in front of me. "Oh, Master Shi, it's been a long time since we last met." She still had that cool expression on his face, looking up at Su Ming and saying, "Why are you looking for me? If there's nothing important, leave quickly. Recently, demons have been rampant, and I have no free time to guide you in martial arts." Chapter 8. Flash away, I'm going to start installing, new book. You are listening at novelfull.audio. She is not blind, let alone deaf. On the contrary, as a yiksha, his sensitivity is very sensitive. When Su Ming flew over to Wangshu Inn, he noticed it. Although the immortals don't have much contact on a daily basis, due to the need to suppress karmic obstacles and the task of eliminating monsters and demons, she often seeks help from Liuyun and Fengjinjuan. For example, seeking convenient talisman mechanisms to help simplify the workflow. After a round of ups and downs, Su Ming and he also got along. At that time, Su Ming kept pestering him to teach him 2 moves when he had something to do. Although I don't know how Su Ming was able to fly in the sky, he didn't bother much. After all, the guy who borrowed the wind from Liuyun has many small inventions, so it's not surprising to have some that he hasn't seen before. I completely didn't think about the transformation of Su Ming's strength. Just now he heard that Su Ming was coming to find him, so he waited here. Unlike in the original plot where 2 outsiders, Ying and Pai Meng, approached him with the 100 No Taboos book, Su Ming knew him and also knew that he was a disciple of Liuyun Jiefengjinjuan. Regardless of whether there is something important or not, he should at least come out to see it in both emotions and reason, and in public and private. So the process went very smoothly, and it didn't disappear like in the original plot after just throwing a sentence. Finally, almond curd was used as bait to explain the situation. When Su Ming saw Xiao appear, he also began to explain the situation, explaining his purpose and the background of the matter. Emperor. Assassinated. The cold face of Shi finally showed a wave. Yeah, Master Shuiwei convened a meeting with the immortals. I'm afraid those 2 outsiders won't be reliable, so I came to see you myself. This matter cannot be delayed. Xiaoshang Xian should leave as soon as possible. She also sighed and said, whether it was in the past or now, I never thought about what it would be like to see Li Yu without Emperor Yan. Well, then I'll go to the meeting first. No, how could it be? I only cleared the monsters around one side a few days ago. Xiao, who was originally about to leave, suddenly changed his face and turned around suddenly. Su Ming also sensed something was wrong and looked towards the distance. I saw something surging beneath the originally smooth mirror-like water surface of Dihua Island. The demonic restlessness. How could it be so sudden? She murmured a few words, his face serious. Then he turned his head and said to Su Ming, evacuate the people here. The shopkeeper and boss here are all from Tianquan Star, and they know what to do. After speaking, he left with a wind turbine standing in two. Evacuation. I don't think it's necessary anymore. It's rare for someone who doesn't have long eyes to come to my door. Let me see how strong I am now. Then, Su Ming's figure moved and he came downstairs. At the same time, Ying also sensed something was wrong. Even though her strength has not yet returned to its previous peak, she is still capable of detecting something wrong. Pai Meng was also frightened by the sudden seriousness of Ying and quickly asked, "What's wrong, Ying? Your face looks so ugly." "There seems to be something wrong over there." Ying looked towards the nearby arch bridge, feeling as if something was about to break free from underneath. Quickly, as if confirming her idea, the water surface suddenly burst open, and several adult rock dragon lizards entangled in this ominous black aura burst out of the riverbed. But everything was not over yet. Accompanied by waves of shaking on the ground, a huge ancient rock dragon lizard followed closely behind and arrived at the ground. Behind the ancient rock dragon lizard, 3 water abyss mages also appeared in the air with piercing and eerie laughter. As 2 abyss mages waved their wands, countless hill people, as well as about 10 hill thugs and a rock-helmeted hill king, were suddenly summoned out. And with the landing of the ancient rock dragon lizard, a huge vibration also came, even from the Wangshu in several hundred meters away, which could be clearly felt. Like the previous few rock dragon lizards, this ancient rock dragon lizard and the people of Qiuqiu are also entangled in ominous black energy. Many merchants who stayed here, as well as passengers and guests who dined and stayed, were shocked and stumbled. The things on the table were also smashed all over the ground. Delicious food, dim sum and good wine fell to the ground at the moment. However, the guests had no intention of caring about these things at this moment, as they also saw something wrong. Not good. There's a demon. Run quickly. Qianyan army, where is Qianyan army? Go and call Qianyan army. The scene suddenly became chaotic, and Ying anxiously looked up at the top floor. And just as she looked up, she saw 2 figures, one green and one blue, shooting out from the top floor one after another, and in the blink of an eye, she arrived at the place where the few rock dragon lizards appeared. The green figure appeared, wielding a long spear in his hand, and in an instant, he shot several rock dragon lizards flying out from more than a few meters. However, just as he wanted to pursue them, he was stopped by the ancient rock dragon lizard. That should be the demon subduing saint, right? Ying guessed roughly the identity of the young man who was fighting against the Gu Yen dragon lizard. However, the rock dragon lizards that were knocked out did not leave. Instead, they took advantage of the ancient rock dragon lizard's drag and formed themselves into a ball, rolling quickly towards the Wangshu Inn. Ying had a serious expression on her face, and she also held in her hand the super good non-sharp sword that would never leave her body for 1,000 years. The whole body also began to stir up wind elements, and the soles of the feet began to brew the newly acquired rock elements in preparation to face the enemy. Unlike in games where only one element can be used at the same time, in reality, Ying Mei can control all the elements at the same time. Just before she could take action, I felt one hand pressing on her shoulder. "Sit down and rest for a while, hand it over to me, just so I can try out my years of cultivation achievements." Ying turned around and saw Su Ming standing behind her with a smile on his face. The cold air permeated throughout the body, causing the temperature of the surrounding air to drop by a few degrees, making the nearby Pai Meng shiver uncontrollably. Ying thought for a moment, then nodded and said, "Then it's up to you." Chapter 9. Extreme Cold, The Power of Pafanti, New Book Seeking. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Su Ming's battle process was very fast. Step by step, as if endless black ice had spread from his feet, condensing into several black ice spears in mid-air. Then several long spears flew out, each ice spear accurately targeting a rock dragon lizard and completely freezing it. Afterwards, the ice gun exploded, and the frozen rock dragon lizard also passed away with the wind. These few rock dragon lizards are not a big problem, the large army of people from the hills behind are the real trouble. The Qianyan army stationed near Wangshu has now engaged in combat with those Qiuqiu people. Due to its location on a transportation artery, the Qianyan army has a considerable number of personnel stationed here. But ordinary soldiers are no match for these Qiuqiu people who have been afflicted with karma. If it weren't for Shi's quick battle and decisive decision, he would have solved the ancient rock dragon lizard that only wanted to entangle him in a few seconds, freeing up his hand to assist the Qianyan army. I'm afraid those ordinary soldiers who haven't been fighting against those monsters for long will lose their combat effectiveness due to being infected with karma. At this moment, Su Ming was also satisfied with retracting the frozen power originating from Pafanti, and the dragon factor quickly replenished his consumption. Although he didn't consume much either. In fact, he had just planned to release the chill and freeze the rock dragon lizard, then he would smash it with each punch. But he had a sudden idea: could he use the power of Pafanti and the magic brought by the dragon factor to use the immortal magic he had learned? He didn't expect it to be really useful after just a simple try. It seems that books from these years have not been memorized in vain. Su Ming regained his power with satisfaction, and then lamented that although he had been unable to sense elemental power for so many years, he had not given up on the theory of practicing these techniques. Otherwise, today I will pretend to be a bit unnatural. Fortunately, Liuyun borrowed the wisdom of Feng Jinjuan, who was open-minded. Even though he was unable to use elemental power, he still devoted all his life's learning to him. According to that woman, I want to teach, you want to learn. If you don't get the point, ask whenever you want, and I will answer whenever I want. It can be said that apart from being a bit stubborn and broken, there is no doubt that Liuyun Jinjuan is a qualified and good master. Next is you all. Su Ming's face froze as Mo Bing slowly formed a somewhat rough-looking spear in his hand. He looked towards the battle situation not far away and saw that she was afraid to use all his might because he had to take care of the soldiers of the Qianyan army. He was temporarily unable to escape under the attack of 3 abyss mages and the Qiuqiu Rock Helm King. Upon seeing this, Su Ming also shouted sternly, the Qianyan army without the Eye of God should immediately withdraw from the battlefield. Escort civilians to evacuate, and do not fight monsters. Surrounding the demon-subduing saint like this is purely causing trouble for the immortals. After being reminded by Su Ming, the Qianyan army only realized later. Except for 3 or 2 Qianyan army soldiers with divine eyes who stayed in place and continued to deal with the Qiuqiu people, the remaining Qianyan army began to retreat in an orderly manner, leading the people to a safe area. Seeing the obstacle disappear, Xiao was able to exert all his strength. The Nua face on his waist appeared on his face at some point, but in the blink of an eye, it was originally incredibly brave. The Qiuqiu Rock Helmet King, who was chasing and beating, flew out in an instant. The sudden change also surprised the 3 abyss mages. Only then did they realize that their opponent was not ordinary mortals, but the protector Yiksha, the demon-slaying saint, who has been fighting with the rock god since the War of the Demon Gods. Watching the situation on the other side of Shi stabilize, Su Ming stopped paying attention and instead flew to the group of Qiuqiu people who were almost catching up with the retreating Qianyan army. Ha! Su Ming's body was filled with cold air and he appeared behind the army of people from Qiuqiu. Even if separated by tens of meters, the retreating Qianyan army, civilians, and businessmen all felt as if the temperature had dropped by tens of degrees in an instant, and began to shiver. The people of Qiuqiu also reacted, and one of the Qiuqiu thugs waved his giant axe, making a powerful and heavy chop towards Su Ming. It's just that Su Ming has no intention of dodging or blocking at all. Ignoring the hill thug, he continued to walk slowly forward. Be careful. Ing couldn't help but exclaim in surprise upon seeing this scene. Just as she was preparing to join the battle and block Su Ming's attack, a shocking scene occurred that shocked her. Without any warning, the originally bared teeth and claws of the Qiuqiu thugs were frozen into a lifelike black ice sculpture 5 meters closer to Su Ming, waving their axes. Su Ming ignored the frozen mound thugs and simply inserted his ice gun into the ground without hesitation. Accompanied by the ice gun entering the ground, the cold air suddenly spread, and in the blink of an eye, all the originally fierce hill people were transformed into ice sculptures. Explosive. Su Ming spoke softly, and as his words fell, these dozens of ice sculptures also turned into powder. It seems that this freezing ability, combined with the techniques I have been practicing over the years, surprisingly works well. It's just a bit unnatural, let's go back and become more proficient. Su Ming reviewed the crushing battle on one side and summarized his own shortcomings. Turning his head, there was no accident on the other side, and the battle was about to end. After being exposed to the rock element shield on his body, the Qiuqiu Rock Helmet King died shortly after under the command of Shi and Pu Yuan. There are only 3 Water Abyss mages left, relying on their eerie skill characteristics, still struggling to support and seeking opportunities to retreat. Want to run? Su Ming naturally saw the intentions of the 3 Abyss mages and raised his hand to shoot 3 ice bombs, accurately hitting the 3 Water Abyss mages. The already terrifying force of extreme cold takes effect more quickly under the diffusion and freezing of water elements. In the blink of an eye, the 3 Water Abyss mages were transformed into ice cubes suspended in mid-air. She didn't hesitate, he raised his hand and shot the 3 Water Abyss mages in one go. At this point, the sudden change came to an end. Chapter 10. Ing Mei with a bitter mouth and a straight body, new book seeking support. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After seeing all the monsters destroyed, a fire abyss chanter on a hillside far away from Wangshu In also dispersed his spying spell. The experiment of using the remnants of the demon god and the power of the abyss to strengthen individuals is over. Overall meets expectations. But when observing special individuals, the force used is not any of the currently known forces. The main manifestation of power is a dark black ice. More intelligence cannot make a detailed judgment. Finally, your blood relatives seem to be very close to that particular individual. Yes, I will be back soon. After some unknown communication with someone, the Fire Abyss Singer also opened the portal of the abyss and left the original place. Only a faint abyssal aura remains. On the other hand, after defeating the enemy, she also came to Su Ming with a wind while standing on both sides and said, "What is your strength? Do people always have secrets, Immortal?" Su Ming chuckled without directly answering Zhao's question. She didn't pay much attention to Thailand, just said, "Anyway, Liuyun once mentioned that you are not from this world, but from outside the star sea of Tiwat. That being the case, some differences are normal, and I have no intention of delving deeper into them. This matter is over. If there's nothing important, I'll take a step first." Su Ming smiled, then took out a almond curd that had been prepared for a long time. "Take it with you on the way, or leave after eating." "Okay, but let's take it and eat on the way," said she with a rare smile. With that, Mandrill took the almond curd and left. After leaving, Su Ming quickly heard footsteps coming from behind. Then I saw a somewhat disheveled soldier from the Qianyan army, with a rock-like divine eye pinned to his waist. "Thank you very much for the help of the immortals." If there were no 2 immortals to take action, the consequences would be unimaginable. Su Ming waved his hand and said, "It's true that the demon-subduing saint is a fairy, but I'm just an ordinary person. I was just lucky enough to have a divine connection and was taken as a disciple by the fairy." Not tight, not tight. Please leave a name, sir, so that I can report to 7 stars and thank you for your help." Su Ming sighed and said, "You don't need to ask for credit or anything else. As a village farmer, I don't need those 7-star rewards." "How can this work?" The sergeant of the Qianyan army wanted to say something more, but was interrupted by the small step of Ing. Ing pulled him over and whispered, "Oh, big brother, people have said that, so don't force yourself. If you offend this person, wouldn't it be more than worth the loss? The master of the immortal family's move is not for fame and fortune, but to prevent ordinary people from being harmed. Do you look down on this person who is being rewarded with a closed mouth? Don't treat people's kindness as a transaction. After listening, the sergeant of Qianyan army felt that something was not quite right, but he still had to be enlightened. That's right, people are masters of the immortal family, staying away from the mortal world and meditating in the mountains and fields. This time, it has always been just to visit the elders of the immortal sect and lend a helping hand when encountering injustice. It's really not right to constantly use money to measure the other person's kindness. Thank you for your advice, Mississippi. If it weren't for your words and reminders, I'm afraid I would have made a big mistake. I only have these moles on me, please don't mind, girl. After speaking, the sergeant of Qianyan army gave Ing a small bag of mora and left with the wounded to deal with his injuries. And Ing stood in place and weighed the mora in her hand, then turned to look at Su Ming with a smile and said, "How are you? Am I doing well? In just a few words, I'll help you get rid of the people who are clinging to you." As she spoke, Ing proudly crossed her waist and said, "Do you think you should give me some reward or something, as a reward for helping you?" Su Ming chuckled and said, "Didn't I give you a bag of mora? Didn't I see it? Can this be the same?" Ing widened her eyes and said, "This is someone who gave me gratitude for my guidance. It's not the reward you gave me. What compensation do you want, Ing?" Su Ming helplessly spread out his hand to Little Bear. "What do you have? What do you want? How do I know what I need if you don't tell me what you have? How do I know if I have something if you don't say what you want?" Ing snorted and said, "Humph, forget it, I'm not rare anymore. Just think I'm blind and helped you this time." "Really not?" Su Ming probed. "No need. Who cares?" Ing pouted angrily, turned her head, and no longer looked at Su Ming's face. "Oh, that's really a pity. Actually, I really have a suitable gift for you. If you don't want it, then I'll throw it away." "What gift?" Upon hearing Su Ming's words, Ing no longer felt uncomfortable, but instead leaned in front of him. The speed of changing faces is astonishing. "Here, that's it. Take a closer look." Su Ming reached out his hand and placed it in front of Ing. Then, a colorful ice flower slowly formed in his hand and appeared before Ying's eyes. Although it is dark ice, it exudes a different kind of beauty in the dusk that is already half hanging in the setting sun. Ing looked at the flowers and then looked up at Su Ming, who was smiling at her. After a brief moment of confusion, her face immediately turned red. "What's wrong? I don't like it, so I'll just scatter it." "How dare you!" Ing snatched the ice flower from Su Ming's hand and tightly grasped it. Strangely, the ink ice that could directly freeze the huge rock dragon lizard, causing the air temperature to drop sharply, was held in her hand at this moment without any chill seeping out. Watching Ing accept the small gift he had prepared on a whim, Su Ming also smiled and said, "You don't need to treasure it so much. Without external influence, it won't be so simplified. By the way, this thing is very hard. It's not a problem to use it to smash a nut or something. If you don't believe it, you can try chopping it with a sword. I promise it's your sword that broke." Ing slammed her head into Su Ming's chest and angrily said, "Who wants to try?"